Awesome. Think we're in a good spot to go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for joining today. My name's Jane. I'm the consulting manager on our CBiz Intacct team, and I see quite a few familiar names in our attendees here. So nice to see everyone again. Really excited to introduce everyone to the Martus team and the solution that they've built out. I think we've seen it help a lot of our existing clients. I think it could help a lot of you. So I'll hand it over to Chris and team to go ahead and jump in. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Jane. Much appreciated. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Grady. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Martus. And joining me for the demonstration is Joseph Plaguey, who is our Director of Service Delivery. Really excited about having the opportunity to present future-proof finance to you all. Given the statistics around both nonprofit organizations and for-profit businesses that struggle without a formal budgeting process, much less a budgeting software solution. Really excited to have the opportunity to show you the overall functionality of the product. But prior to turning things over to Joseph, wanted to share just a handful of slides with you all that I think highlight some things that are worth consideration. We are a 15-year-old company with roughly 825 customers, although I think that's creeping up towards 850 these days, and over 600 are on Sage Intacct. So we have an exceptional knowledge of the Sage Intacct product. Many people on the Martus team have consulted, implemented, and sold Sage Intacct, and even Martus was sort of designed with a Sage Intacct dimensionality in mind. So we have a very comfortable fit there. Further, because I know that there's a host of different types of organizations on this call, we consider our solution to be sector agnostic. We serve nonprofit, healthcare, environmental, and services businesses, many other sort of segments and for-profit segments as well. We have a bi-directional API with Sage Intacct. So existing budgets, income, and expenses can be pushed into Martus and vice versa. So we have an overnight sync, and then we also have an on-demand sync as well. So if ever your team is in a particular situation where you need an on-demand sync, it's available to you. A couple more things. Martus integrates seamlessly with Sage Intacct, so there's no data translations or shadow accounts that need management. One of the key differentiators of our product is a 3-calendar-week implementation. When considered against other budgeting and FP&A solutions, that is very quick. Further, ready to use immediately. So before the end of the first implementation call, there are out-of-the-box financial reports that are available to our customers. There's a lot of hesitation around FP&A and budgeting solutions as it relates to time to value, and we really believe that we get over that hump very quickly by providing those reports. And then every 2 weeks, kind of product updates, on-demand updates. Joseph will show you how you can limit user access by function, dimension, and more. And if you are using statistical accounts as drivers in Intacct, you are capable of using those as well. That is really the gist of my slides. I really want to create as much space for Joseph as possible to show you the product and answer questions if there are any. So I'm going to stop my share at this time and turn things over to Mr. Plaguey.
All right, thank you, Chris. I'm going to share my screen here. And as we go through, if you have questions, you can drop them in the Q&A here, and we'll happily get to those as we're moving along. To give you a little bit of roadmap for what we're going to show you inside of Martus. Martus is budgeting, forecasting, and reporting. And so we have a dashboard area where we can get quick budget versus actual reports. We have a report builder as well to build customized reports. Our planner section is actually where we're going to start today, here in a few minutes. This is where we're creating budgets, doing some new reforecasted versions of those, multi-year forecasting, things like that. So we'll spend most of our time there as we're together. We also have a personnel budgeting module where we can budget headcounts and different pay items related, to each position if you want to get that level of granularity. And then also one thing I'll point out is as we're moving through, I am an admin user inside of the system, which means we have access to all the setup topics. We can work with other users and their roles. And so we're going to be able to see and do everything is the point as the admin user. Now, more than likely, you're going to have other people on your team that need access to Martus to create budgets, for their areas of responsibility. And you don't want them seeing everything in Martus, or having, the options to do other things as well. So that's where the permissions come in. And as a quick example here, I have Ed, where you'll notice he does not get access to personnel budgeting or certain other features here. And then furthermore, we can limit access based upon dimensions. Now, we can have up to 8 dimensions inside of Martus. I have 3 dimensions configured right now. I have entity, department, and project. This would, of course, reflect your use of dimensions in Sage Intacct. And so with Ed's user here, when he logs in, he's only going to get access to entity number 1. He doesn't know the other entities even exist. If you have locations, we can further restrict down to that location level as they roll up into different entities. And then furthermore, on departments, within entity 1, Ed only sees IT and facilities here. He's not going to see other departments. So his use of Martus, when he logs in, his reports will be automatically filtered for the areas he has access to here. And then the areas he's able to budget for will be limited to the same as well. Now I'm going to come over here to our planner summary. Again, the planner section, this is where we're building new budgets. We have a very collaborative environment, allowing multiple users, many users to work on the same version at the same time, and everybody's work gets consolidated in real time here. So the planner summary, this is a consolidated view of the budget. Let's talk about how we budget first, and I'll mention forecasting options a little bit later. So this is a budget. It's called my working budget right now because people are working on it. And you'll notice at the top, here's my filters, right? I can filter it down to very specific areas to see each area's budget, slice and dice the data with those filters. You'll notice also a lot of the reports in Martus are very flexible. And I say not just because of the filters, but also on the rows and columns, how you can modify these views. So right now it's in the account view summary, which is why we see the accounts on the rows. But if I wanted to say, give me a quick departmental view of the budget, so I could see income, expenses, and so forth broken down by my departments, a little higher level. Or if we can kind of pivot this, let's say we want to take departments across the columns, go back to the accounts. Again, just different ways to analyze the budget from this summary report. Now, there are other analysis reports as well. We won't have time to get into all of these side-by-side comparisons. So if you go through different versions, different iterations of that, new forecasted versions, you can quickly compare those side by side and also against actuals. All right, so how do we budget in Martus? I want to talk about the typical user experience and set the kind of the main concept up for you. Again, we have a collaborative environment, and the way we facilitate that collaboration, there I drilled into office supplies, is through what we call budget worksheets. Now, these budget worksheets are defined by your dimensions. So the point here is, as users are working in these different budget areas based on their permissions, Martus will take everyone's work from all of these areas and consolidate that in real time into one overall budget. So you can see everybody's work coming together in real time and the effects on the bottom line there of that budget. Now let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's go to their worksheets. How do they actually budget in a budget worksheet? So behind the scenes of those numbers lie those budget worksheets. In Martus, when you see blue, that's going to be drillable. So I had drilled into the office supplies there, and it took us to the listing of the worksheets. And I'm going to, sorry, I had to load a second there. There we go. All right. Now here's a different listing of the same worksheets, a little bit different view. And I brought us here because before we go into one, I want to show you something here, the status. So most of these are still open, meaning people are working on them, but a few have been submitted. One was approved, one's still waiting for approval, another one's been denied. So over here to the right, you'll see owners and approvers. And notice you can have more than one approver. There can be different levels of approvers as well. So when someone submits their budget worksheet, it's going to send an email to whoever that approver is. They're going to come into Martus and review the worksheet, and then approve it or deny it, and leave any comments back to the user. So in this case, Kelly denies, and she sends it back to Ed. He's going to make some updates and then resubmits it. Now, how do they actually create a budget? So we're in this worksheet going into it now. This is going to be the typical user experience. So again, users are working in these worksheets, creating budgets based on their permissions. So I'm in this entity and I'm in this department. Now on my budget lines that you see here, we've got the GL accounts and I have a project dimension. You may or may not have this inside the worksheet. That's something that would be discussed through implementation. If I can add more lines, you'll see over here I have the add line option. Now the lines that we can add, those are the accounts that would sync in from Intacct. Right? So we have a nightly sync that brings in updates to accounts and dimensions, the actuals as well. So I can add more lines if I needed to, or I could even delete lines if they're no longer relevant. But one of the questions often is, well, how do these lines get there if they're already there, right? So these lines actually come from what we call our reference data. So I've expanded the section up above now, showing my 22 actuals plus remaining budget. Okay, so this reference section that is put on the screen here, that is designed to help users fill out the budget section below. So that's where those accounts come from, our current year activity or budget. Now, salaries, we'll talk about that separately. It's not down here just yet. Now notice the blue again. So part of the integration with Intacct, we can drill into the actuals. So if I click into that number there, it's going to make a live API call out to Intacct, and it pulls in the transaction detail. Now you'll see memos and descriptions, how that was coded there. And furthermore, we can also get attachments inside of Martus for things like AP bills, journal entries, and credit card transactions. Now, how do we fill out this budget section here below? One of the ways is to initialize this. This is one of the options. You don't have to do this. There's other options I'll show as well. But let's say we want to take our current year actuals as a starting point for next year's budget and apply those to the same months next year. And then because we're not through with the current year just yet, we'll take budget for the last few months of our current year and apply those to next year. Now I can do an adjustment on that. If I leave it at 100%, you'll see I basically just copied down those same values. There's 150 for legal fees as a starting point for legal fees next year. So my current year is 22. Next year is 23 here in my demo environment. Now, other options, that's just one way to get going. We can certainly click into a budget line and say, I need to bump that up. We're going to have some more, so let's bump it up a little bit. Hit enter or click the save button, and that updates that line. On the office supplies line, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to use this budget widget. So this little calculator, we call it the budget widget. It gives users some quick adjustments. We get a lot of good feedback around this, a lot of use, because it also allows you not just some quick adjustments that you see here, but the option to put notes in. So let me give you a couple examples here. Let's pretend we should budget a monthly amount of $100. So it's going to be a monthly spread for office supplies, $100 a month. I could do a weekly spread. So you'll see there's 5 weeks in January there, 4 in February, and so forth. I could do a bi-weekly, quarterly, or even annual spread. So if it's an annual amount, so let's say we need to budget $10,000 for the year, but just spread it evenly. Now, other budget lines, that may be good for some, but others need something a little bit different. So there's a burn rate option I'll show, where we can say, let's look at the trailing 12-month actuals. And these are again, the actuals sinking in from Intacct. And that burn rate, if I click preview, is $1,607 a month. Or if we said, let's capture seasonality, let's still look at the trailing 12, but I want to adjust this by a percentage. So maybe let's pretend this is utilities or something. So let's bump up utilities by 7% for next year. Still capture the seasonality, but you'll see that 1479 becomes a 1583 now. Now my notes, I'm going to say we increased by 7% based on the trailing 12 months. Now you can put other notes in here. I copied that same note down, but you can put more notes or still update amounts further. I'm going to go ahead and save that budget line, and you'll see it gets updated back in our worksheet. That icon turns blue, and that indicates there are notes on this budget line. And as I hover over there, I can see those notes. So for approval purposes, someone reviewing my work, they know how I got to this number. Now we also realize there's going to be some other use cases where we need to have more functionality here. So I'm going to talk about the special purpose worksheet. You saw this little icon's a little bit different, and there were amounts already on this line when we came into the worksheet. So SPW, special purpose worksheet. You might be asking, what's so special about this? Well, there's a few different things. One of those is you might want to itemize certain budget lines. So notice here I've itemized some software subscriptions. I've got my accounting software. Here's Martus, expense tracking, Microsoft Office. I'll come back to that in a second. But I put in some amounts in. Maybe it's an annual amount all in 1 month, or maybe you need to spread that, over 12 months, things like that. You determine that when you set this up. But because they're all posting to that same software account, Martus is going to aggregate those totals, concatenate notes. And this is that one budget line we saw in the worksheet, but all of the detail here is listed out. Now, the other thing that you can do with special purpose worksheets is you can create other formulas and calculations. So it's a very simple example here where I have a rate, $10 per month per user, times a quantity, the number of users. So 25 users, 10 times 25 gives us that $250 expense. Now, there's many different use cases for this. You can drive revenue, right, based upon different, drivers there, volumes and things of the sort. You can also do allocations. So if you need to allocate costs across different cost centers, departments, programs, entities, you can do that as well. So let's give you a couple other examples. I know we've got a wide range of verticals represented on our webinar here, but show you this revenue example where we've got the number of rooms or beds available to us, days in the month for the part of the calculation, occupancy, daily bed rates to drive gross revenue. And then based upon that, maybe we've got to budget some agency staff related to this, right? So this is where all those formulas can get connected to drive revenue and even some expenses. And I don't have this set to post right now, but I can get that set to post to drive other expenses as well based upon occupancy or census and those things. And one more example I'll show is we talked about the allocation. So maybe we need to say, let's allocate some overhead, some utilities in this example. And we're going to allocate that based on headcount. So I've got my gross utility costs that we're going to allocate, the headcount for each of those departments. And then based upon their percentage of total headcounts, we'll allocate these amounts to each of these different departments. Okay, so it hit those different worksheets, sales, marketing, and HR, with those amounts for utilities. So lots of different use cases there. Coming back to our worksheet, just to kind of round this out, if you have any statistical accounts you want to budget for, you can do that as well. Even use those as drivers in those SPWs. Attachments, if there's any supporting documentation related to this budget area, they can upload that. And then when they're all finished, they're going to hit submit and lock. That's when it locks this worksheet down. It's going to send an email to whoever the approver is, and they're going to come into Martus, review the worksheet just like we see it here. The only difference is that it'll be locked down to prevent any changes as it goes through approvals. So they can approve it or deny it in that process and leave comments as we discussed before. Now to bring this full circle, if we go back over here to where we started, summary area, this is where we started. If I filter now for the accounting department and I click load, there's the work that we just did, all summarized into the overall budget already. Okay. All right, so that's how we're working with budgets. We've got different reports for analysis. You can do, of course, all that's being facilitated through user permissions and budget worksheets. And as you move through the year or you have different versions, I'll show you one more report here. You'll notice in 22, I've got my final approved budget. And I've got a couple of different forecasts, maybe a 6 + 6, a 9 + 3. We'll see clients do this on a monthly basis as well. I can still add 2 more here, but let's just stop with 3. And by the way, filters are sticky. I forgot about that. Let me take that filter off. So here's a good example. This is just the accounting department, right? The difference is from one version to the next compared back to the base budget, but we get it at the summary level for all areas, right? There's our differences there. I can still filter that down like I would just had it for accounting, or I can also put it in different views on rows and columns as well. Okay. Now, the only difference when you do a forecast like you see here, if we use this method right here, what you would do is you make a copy of, let's say, the final approved budget. That's all done under planner setup, kind of the admin area of Martus. You create a new copy and then you load actuals into it. It's very simple. So I know we do have our clients do a lot of forecasting on this. So they got the original approved budget, and then they will take that one. Don't want to make any changes to it. So they'll make sure it's locked down. They'll create a copy of it. And then in that new copied version, load actuals. So that's what I did with these. So in this one, I loaded actuals for the first 9 months and then made some new projections the last 3. Now the worksheets are going to look the exact same. So let me come back over here. And let me just show you the difference though, that they're going to see inside of the worksheet. So here's my forecast 9 plus 3. We're going to go into this, and then look just the same way we saw them before. The only difference here is when they click into a budget line, notice what happens. Those months where we loaded actuals are grayed out. I cannot change those. But then I have the last 3 months there to still make some new projections. Now, all the same tools are available to you, the budget widget, SPWs, and the like. It only applies, though, to those remaining open months. All right. There is one other thing I'll show before, well, two things, I guess. Let me show Intacct here first. So when you do have a budget, it's complete, locked down in Martus. You want to send that back to Intacct for reporting purposes over there. You select your Martus budget you want to send to Intacct. Choose your your Intacct budget ID. I have a lot there from testing, but you'll have your Intacct budget ID, and then click that orange button. That's going to send it right through the API so that you can use what you've created in Martus over in Intacct as well. And the last thing I'll show in this planner section is going to be our forecast module. Now, this is a little bit different from what I was talking about just previously when we were creating a forecast. This is going to give you multi-year projections, or you can also create what-if scenarios. So when I click Add New Forecast, that's when you're going to get that option. Multi-year, what-if analysis, or even what-if by month. So the way that this works, we'll do a what-if analysis. We'll say we want to do 3 scenarios. And I'm going to do it at a high level here. I'm going to say, let's do it by entity, department, and account category. So I'm not going to go down to the account level. And we base it on one of those budgets that we had previously. So let's just take our final approved budget. Those were all the worksheets are. And by the way, you've got to enter a forecast name. Let's see. So let's call this our, let's just call it what it is, the what if. Okay. And preview that. All right, now the way this works is you're going to get this grid, and you're going to see those 3 different scenarios. Let's call this our good scenario, our better, and then our best. There's no worst case here. All right, now we're going to take each of these. You'll see I can select columns. I can select individual cells. I can select rows and columns. And when you do that, you'll see, as I'm doing, that I've got I've got this adjust selected box comes up. So just to do this really quick as an example, I'm going to take this whole column. You probably don't want to do this in reality, but just so you can see, I'm going to say, let's adjust this one by 5%. Let's increase revenue in this good scenario with 5% increase. Apply this. And we're going to go to this one. The better is going to be a 7% increase. Put notes in here so I remember what we did. Because as you see, when I save that and I hover over, there's that note, and then there's the amounts that it gets adjusted by based on the current budget. And the best one, we'll do one more, and this is going to be our 10%. All right, now once I got all my adjustments I want to make, and of course you can change that. That's just a quick example. You can change that on a row by row, column by column basis. Of course, there's filters at the top as well that you can filter this down for. I'm not going to worry about the expenses, but it works the same way. At the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and view the results of this. And so what you're going to see is a cleaned up report here that looks at the original budget. So the current column here, where we're at in income. There's my good scenario with the 5%, 7%, and 10% increase for those 3 different scenarios. Okay, so you can do that on a what-if basis, different independent scenarios like this, or multi-year, which works the same way. You'd have year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think up to 10 years we can do. The only difference there is when you make an adjustment in year 1, that rolls forward to years 2 and beyond. So you stack year on year with the multi-year one. All right, so let's move over to personnel budgeting. So we're budgeting, income, expenses, and then we've got the personnel piece. I said we'd roll back around to that, and now's the time. So base scenario, you can have multiple scenarios on personnel as well. Once you have a base scenario, you can say, let's make a quick copy of that. And in that new copied version, what if we had some COLA adjustments, or if insurance increased, or if we added some new positions? So it is position-based. On that note, I'm going to go to our positions tab and talk about how we budget personnel here in Martus. There's a couple different options on that. So we can say, let's have each position listed out with all the employees that are associated with those positions. You don't have to do that way if you don't want to. Some positions you might want to, others you might want to pool. So instead of having like 7 counselors here, what I mean by pooling a position is I could have 1 counselor position that represented 7 FTEs. So I don't really want to track it by employee. We can pool those. Or you can have vacant positions as well. Now, inside of these positions, we're tracking a few different things. So notice there's that pool option, FTEs, start and end dates. So if it's left blank like this one is, we're telling Martus to budget all 12 months for this position. Otherwise, if you have some seasonal employees or you have someone that might not start until mid-year, you could enter those dates so it only calculates for those periods. Then down below, we have the dimensions. We've got to tell Martus where to budget this position. Now, this is where they would start. We do have a lot of clients that will allocate employees across dimensions. So if that's the case, we have this allocations feature on the personnel side as well. Now, another thing I'll point out up here are the pay types. So this is what's driving the compensation. Pay types are all the ways that employees are compensated, their pay, benefits, taxes, and things. As you move through training, those are items that you would set up. So if we come over here to pay types, I'll give you a couple examples beyond what we see here. So on our pay types, you can have different ones for salaried employees versus hourly employees, bonuses, health insurance, retirement matches. I'm going to go into one of these. You can get very granular here too if you'd like to. You don't have to, but it's an option where you can list out different coverage tiers and what the employer is paying on behalf of the employees there. Or something like a retirement match. There might be a waiting period where the first 3 months there's no match. And then once they become eligible in month 4 and thereafter, it'll match at 5% based on the source pay types you define here. So if they have salary and they have a retirement match, it'll take 5% of salary after 4 months of employment, or after 3, I guess, starting in month 4. Okay, so lots of options to set those up, taxes and other things. You can put limits. So, if people are over that wage cap and we just stop calculating Social Security, you can put limits on that as well. All right, coming back to our position. So this position has these pay types. Doesn't have all of them that we saw on the screen, just what's relevant to this position. Now click to view detail. And what this is going to do is give us a breakdown of each pay type for this position. So you can see the overall totals for the year broken down by pay type, and then also how that breaks down month over month. Now you can also do, like I said before, other kind of scenarios in personnel. And just to give you a quick example, I'm not going to go out of this one just yet, but I'm going to say, let's take this and everybody that's on salary, let's bump them up a certain percentage. So I would filter for that salary pay type and show all of my positions and employees with that pay type. We'll do a select all, use this update pay items feature. And just so you can see the change, we're going to bump it starting in February. And I'm going to do a percentage, 5% bump, and let that go through the scenario. So notice there's the 5,500 that became 5,775 and on down the line. Now, anything dependent on salary, like your retirement matches and taxes, all of that just flows through and updates automatically. So the point here is you can have these different scenarios, compare them, and then figure out which one you'd like to use in your budget or the new forecast. And to get it over there, we're going to come to the summary tab. Now, this summary tab is going to show us how it's going to post back to those budget worksheets that we were in before. And it's going to post in summary by account and those dimension values. Now, I mentioned this in summary because we're not going to post all those pay type details that we were seeing, nor the employee names, unless you have the employee dimension and you want that to be a part of it. We could do that. But otherwise, all those details are going to stay in personnel budgeting, which is a permission-based area. And at the bottom of this screen, you would select which budget or new forecast you want to post this scenario to, and click Post to Existing Budget. Now, again, lots of flexibility in reporting. Let's show you a couple other examples. So if I wanted to see this by position, just summary by position, what those totals are, you might want to see something like this. And there's a total for the year by position, broken down by month. I might want to remove some of these columns. So let's get rid of these and just clean that up a little bit more. All right, and there you see I sorted as well. So you can put sorts on columns, you can filter these columns. I'm going to show you another report here. Going to go to allocation analysis. So if you do allocate employees, this is a great report to see that. And right now I'm showing it without allocations. And where you see these italics, that's where they would post to the budget based on their position setup, right? The dimensions that we saw on the position before. Now, if I filter for Daisy, I have one set up for Daisy here. We're going to load this. And this is Daisy without any allocations. But when I bring her in with the allocation, you'll see that I'm allocating her to these 4 different departments. So she started here, but I've split her across these other areas. You'll see the amounts broken down by each of the departments for the year and then broken down by month. Now you can do different percentages, splits as you move through the year. You'll see how I've changed that a little bit starting in February, then brought it back. So her time was spent a little bit differently in February than other months. Now, also what I could do is I could say, let's show this by dimension. Let's take Daisy's filter off. Let me load this. And, as an example here, here's everybody on professional services with a 999 general service line. We have 7.2 FTEs, about $525,000. And there's a little bit of Daisy allocated there. All right, so I'm monitoring our Q&A a little bit. I don't see any questions. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in this Q&A or chat. Happy to address those. When you come in, we'll answer those, but let me keep moving for us. Let's go to the dashboard section now. So when we came in, you saw some visualizations. There is some pre-built visualizations there. There's also these other pre-built reports, and I'm on the income statement right now. And so what we're looking at is actuals through September, budget for September, the monthly variance. And where you see on these columns, the variance columns, you'll see red and black. So we say red is bad and black is good. We do have a lot of clients who bring in their, the kind of the non-financial users, those people who are like the boots on the ground, but they still need to do budgets and they still need to be held responsible to those. So we make reporting very user-friendly for them. And they're logging into Martus and they're automatically filtered for the departments or other dimensions they have access to, right? So instead of seeing all of these in their filter, they would see just what you give them access to. So they can come in here anytime, see budget versus actuals by month, year to date, what's remaining based upon the annual budget, and then also drill in. So again, blue is drillable. If I drill into office supplies here from our actuals, again, there's that transaction detail. There is an attachment right there. You can see that blue paper clip. And then there's a JPEG, right? So whatever attachments in Intacct on those bills, journal entries, or credit card transactions, we can get those in Martus as well. Now, there could be some accounts that you don't want other users seeing, right? So these personnel accounts or other ones that you might not want them seeing, you can create or set them to what we call restricted inside of Martus. And if users don't have permissions to view restricted accounts, they won't see them on their reports or for budget purposes. Now you can give them view access, but not edit, where they can still see them, but not change them if it's related to budget. Or you can also prevent drill down. That's another setting on accounts. If they don't have permissions to drill down for any accounts that were set that way, they wouldn't be able to see that detail. All right, now, again, one more time on the flexibility of reporting, you can put those in other views, dimensional views, or even other time periods. So if I wanted to say, just do current month and year to date instead of all months year to date, can get that a little more simplified. Maybe I want to show it quarterly or year over year, or again, put dimensions across columns. Now, if you get a view that you like, you can save that. So next time it's just a click of a button. So here I've got my departments on my rows expanded by my different entities. All right, now there are other reports here ready to use, very, very user-friendly, and I'm going to show you the monthly budget comparison. And maybe we want to see this kind of like we have it here with departments on our rows, but I want to see month over month budget versus actuals and what that variance is by month. But also let's put a little more detail in. Let's say we expand this to show the account level as it rolls up into these departments as well. Right. So again, just some different views. And then maybe this is a view I like. I want to save that or even make it a default. So when I come up here, this is the first one I see on my reports. Now, this is a wide report because of all the columns, but we get over here to the right, the year-to-date numbers, and then the annual as well. All right. And then if some of these pre-built reports that you see listed here with all the different options to put them in different views wasn't quite getting you what you're looking for, there's also a custom report builder. Now with the custom report builder, we give you some templates to start with, or you could also build something from scratch. Click add new, and it gives you a little framework to start with, and then you go from there. So I'm gonna go into one of these and just kind of give you an idea of what you could do, where you might want to create some scorecards or some other charts and graphs related to some specific data that you've pulled in to base that off of. So if you want to look at, prior year, 2 years back, 3 years back, and do different comparisons, budgets, actuals, things like that. It's just a matter of pulling in those data sources here, and then the years that you're looking at. And then based upon that, again, you can create these reports in other ways as well. You can also create these other visualizations from that. All right, so what we've covered so far, I see a question on the drill down options. Does it level down or go straight to GL detail? For example, if I'm at the entity level, does it drill down to department first or department group first? Yeah, great question. So if we go back to the drill down, let me go back to that transactions report it took us to. Oops. Okay, so if I was drilling into office supplies. So it goes down automatically to the lowest level detail and shows all dimensions. So it's what we're reading here is the general ledger from Intacct, and then any attachments, like I said, on AP bills, journal entries, or credit card transactions. So it does go down to that GL detail level. And then you have the option to sort this in different ascending or descending orders or filter it down using different dimensions as well. So if I wanted to see office supplies just for one entity, I would just filter for that one entity there. Get rid of the other ones. The budget comparison. Yeah, so this is just the general ledger detail. And yeah, the budget comparison is going to be at this higher level here where you have the opportunity to do it by account and then your different dimensions. Yeah, the budget comparison will be at the account and dimension level here. Good. All right, got questions rolling in. If you limit accounts, people can see what shows so that the report foots to total budget. Yeah, so if you do limit accounts, that's under the account setup. Any accounts that are set to restricted, let me flesh this out for you here. Get all these tabs closed. I think I've got some set to restricted. Yeah, so like my personnel accounts, you'll see this restricted column. Those are set to restricted. So if a user on their permissions, if they don't have permissions to view restricted accounts, let's go into one of these. Right there. If they don't have this permission, they're not going to see those personnel accounts on their report. And so therefore, the report would be reduced by those expenses for those personnel accounts. Now, maybe it's okay to see those in summary. Most of our clients, they'll say, yeah, it's all right to see them in summary for their areas that they have access to, but I don't want them drilling down. So in that case, it would still include those amounts, and so that the report does foot to the total budget, but they can't change those or drill down necessarily. So those are options as well. You'll see I lost my place, but on the accounts, there's a drill down option as well. And then if they have the ability to edit, if it's related to budget, can they edit those or change those? All right. So one last thing I'd like to show, make sure we get plenty of time to get to your next meeting. We do have a cash flow forecasting piece in this. And so I'm going to pull it up. We focused all on the P&L side, right? We're creating budgets for different, cost centers, departments, programs, entities. It's all been on the P&L side. We do have a cash flow forecasting piece, which allows us to take one of those budgets that has been created, and based upon that budget, see balance sheet impacts. This is one of the reports here. So if I were to drill into these balance sheet accounts here, it would show me the underlying accounts, budget lines that are affecting these accounts. Now, there is some setup related to amortization schedules for what we call, it's basically the timing of the impact on cash. So there's defaults that get set on the accounts, on those income statement accounts, that therefore drives these reports. But I can drill in, see the underlying budget lines, or click into the AMWART button. It pulls up something like this, where you can see where we budgeted some insurance in our budget in January there, and it's going to go in and out of AP. And based upon the amortization schedule assigned to this account, by default, we're budgeting in January, and the default is we're going to pay it out at 100% in February. So AP is getting decreased. Of course, cash will get decreased. And then our prepaid account right here, we are recognizing that expense over the next 12 months, straight lined at $4,100 a month. So you'll be able to see that detail, as well as a projected balance sheet here. And so just to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, here's my prepaids. You'll see that it is dropping that $4,100 each month. Of course, you're probably going to have more than just this, but this is just a very clear example to see how that works. And then something like on the AP side, notice it's at 84 and it drops to 34 for that payment. And of course, cash is getting decreased as well. Now, there's other items affecting these lines, but you'll be able to see the projected balance sheet. And if you have more than one entity, you can see that by entity as well. And the last one here is the statement of projected cash flows. It's one of my favorite reports where, again, broken down by entity, you can see that this is this net gain or loss. That's the net gain or loss from the budget. Month over month, we'll tie to that income statement budget that we were working in before. And then you're able to build in any kind of investing activities or financing activities to see the overall projected increase in cash or decrease in cash, the changes we'll say, month over month. Okay, so this cash flow forecasting piece will be part of our premium subscription tier. All right, so we've went through dashboard, planner, personnel, cash flow forecasting, talked a little bit about setup with users and a little bit on accounts there. Want to make sure we give you guys plenty of time before your next meeting, but with the time that we do have here, are there any other questions that we could address while we're together in this webinar?
Well, thanks, Joseph. Much appreciated. And thanks to everyone in attendance this afternoon. I just wanted to say thank you so much. Hopefully you were well informed when it comes to the entirety of Martus's functionality. If you have any other questions about Martus in the future that perhaps were not answered or something comes to mind down the line, by all means, just reach out to Jane. And I guess at this time, I'll turn things over to Jane in case she has anything else she'd like to include before we depart.
Thanks, Chris. Nope, that's really it. I wanted to thank everyone for joining. And as Chris mentioned, any questions about the product that we can help answer, just reach out to me and we'll get you those answers or get you connected with the right person. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.